And now on to our main feature, the Amityville haunted house. On a cold November night in 1974, a brutal murder took place in a seemingly ordinary house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. The killer, Ronald DeFeo Jr., used a shotgun to murder 6 members of his family while they slept. Although he confessed to the crime, claiming to have heard voices telling him to do it, he was declared innocent by reason of insanity and sentenced to 6 consecutive jail terms of 25 years each, meaning that he was never to be released. 1 year after the tragedy, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved into the very same home. At first, the family was happy in their new house. George even wrote down in his journal how grateful he was to be living there. But things began to change as the weeks went on. For example, on Christmas Eve 1975, George discovered what looked like scratches on the back of his legs. And when he asked his son to touch his back, he felt scratches as well. Now, being a practical man, George didn't think much of it. But then other weird stuff started happening. Like, for instance, one night, George woke up in the middle of the night and felt something cold staring at him. When he turned on the lights, he saw a strange, shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. Startled, he yelled at the figure and it disappeared. Another time, George and Kathy were sitting in bed together when they heard footsteps pacing back and forth in the hallway. The couple got out of bed to investigate and found nothing. Then they heard a loud bang and chalked it up to settling pipes. That is until the banging started to happen on a regular basis, and sometimes even during the day. Other times they could hear disembodied voices whispering their names, especially at night. And once Kathy even heard her name being called out in a raspy old man's voice. Then there was the matter of the temperature. In certain rooms, the temperature would suddenly drop significantly without warning. And that wasn't the only creepy thing about the house. Sometimes the smell of sulfur would appear out of nowhere, but what really freaked the family out were the apparitions. Kathy claimed to have seen the ghost of a little girl in Victorian nightgown walking through the halls. She also saw the specter of an old man wearing a long black coat. One time, she saw an apparition of a nun who seemed to be dragging herself along the floor. The scariest apparition, though, was the demon pig. She saw it only twice, but the second time it appeared, it growled at her. She described the beast as having the body of a pig, the head of a monkey, and glowed red eyes. One day, while cleaning the house, Kathy found a spot in the basement where the concrete had turned black and the air was stale, like it hadn't circulated in years. When she told George about it, he went down into the basement to check it out. But before he went, he warned his wife not to go down there because it was dangerous. Well, Kathy must have not heard him, because a few days later she decided to go check it out for herself. As she descended into the basement, she heard a raspy voice say, "Get out!" although she couldn't tell where it came from. Kathy screamed and ran back upstairs. From that point on, Kathy avoided the basement, but she wasn't able to avoid the visions. At one point, George and Kathy were lying in bed together when they heard chains dragging metal moans. Then they saw the specter of an emaciated old man dragging himself closer and closer to their bed. They screamed and fell under the covers until the commotion stopped. Once George saw the apparition of a small child standing at the foot of his bed, staring at him with lifeless eyes. And then there were times when he could have sworn he heard demonic laughter coming from the walls themselves. The kids weren't safe from the demons either. One day they were playing in their bedrooms when their toys started flying through the air. They also claimed to see ghastly faces peering at them from the closet and underneath their beds. With things escalating, the Lutz family reached out to priests for help. But this was no ordinary case of demonic possession. Something sinister and powerful lurked within the walls of that house. Even a veteran priest who specialized in exorcisms refused to step foot inside because he felt uneasy. The investigation continued with the help of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they gathered evidence that made the case one of the most frightening hauntings in modern history. They brought in electronic equipment to measure electromagnetic fields, which can sometimes indicate the presence of spirits. They also conducted audio and video recordings, capturing mysterious sounds and even images of apparitions. But as the investigations continued, the haunting intensified. Objects moved, sounds grew louder, and the apparitions became more frequent and bolder. The climax occurred when George and Kathy were blessed by a Roman Catholic priest. During the ceremony, the room filled with a putrid stench, and the cross used in the blessing levitated above the priest's head. Terrified, the priest fled the house, leaving the Lutz family trapped in a nightmare. With their faith healer gone, George and Kathy knew they had to escape. They left the house in the middle of the night, never looking back. In the morning, the local newspaper reported that 2 priests had been found unconscious near the house. They had apparently become violently ill during the night. Alone and desperate, the Lutz family contacted paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren for help. Together, they confronted the evil entity plaguing the house. But what they uncovered was beyond their wildest imaginations. As they delved deeper into the case, they learned about the gruesome history of the house. The previous owner, Ronald DeFeo, had confessed to hearing voices when he committed the horrific massacre of his entire family. But those voices were not his own. Something sinister had driven him to commit the unthinkable. The Warrens discovered that the house was built on an ancient Native American burial ground, and malevolent spirits had been awakened by the construction. These spirits, along with the evil entity that had possessed DeFeo, had transformed the house into a vortex of darkness. They performed an exorcism, but the entity retaliated. Furniture flew across the room, pictures fell from the walls, and the temperature plummeted. Then the apparition of the demon pig appeared before them, growling menacingly. The presence of the demon pig was a terrifying sight to behold. It had the body of a bloated pig, a monkey-like head and glowing red eyes. The mere sight of it sent shivers down their spines. The entity taunted them, its voice echoing through the halls, laughing hysterically. It challenged them, daring them to leave. But they stood their ground. Determined to conquer the evil, the Warrens continued their investigation. They uncovered a network of tunnels beneath the house, leading to an underground chamber filled with bones. These were the remains of the Native Americans who had been buried there centuries ago. The entity was using the bones as anchors to maintain its presence. In a final showdown, the Warrens confronted the entity head-on. Using holy water and crucifixes, they fought to break its hold over the house. But the battle was fierce. The entity unleashed its full power, causing chaos and destruction. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, the Warrens discovered a hidden message in the floorboards. It was a prayer written in the language of the Native Americans. With renewed strength, the Warrens incorporated the prayer into their ritual. The entity recoiled, its power waning. Finally, with a mighty roar, it vanished, leaving behind a sense of overwhelming peace. The house was cleansed, the spirits laid to rest. But the scars of the haunting remained. The Lutz family returned to find their home forever changed. They sold it quickly, fleeing from the shadows of the past. Over the years, the story of the Amityville horror captivated the world. Many have doubted its authenticity, calling it a hoax. But the evidence speaks for itself. The physical manifestations, the personal accounts. Could there be something more to this chilling tale? Perhaps there are some horrors best left buried, some secrets too terrible to unearth. Now it's your turn. Do you believe in ghosts? Have you ever experienced anything paranormal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, please like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for another spine-tingling ghost story.